Have you ever wondered how Cartoon Network went from what was essentially just Rerun Central to being the biggest cartoon, network around? Well, then welcome to... It all begins in the mid-1980s, a time when cable television was growing like wildfire. But the idea of a 24-hour animation network, that was borderline science fiction. Enter Ted Turner, the man who at any given moment seemed either impossibly brilliant or recklessly audacious. On March 25th of 1986, Turner made a move that would in hindsight feel almost inevitable. He acquired MGM UA, a massive studio with decades of film history under its belt. But here's the twist. Turner's empire wasn't quite ready for that level of ambition. Within 75 days, less than 3 months, the deal collapsed under the weight of debt and financial realties. Turner had to sell MGM UA back to its previous owner, Kirk Kerkorian, and yes, that's his actual name. Don't ask, I don't know. But this wasn't a total loss. Oh no, Turner walked away with a prize far greater than a studio building. He walked away with the pre-made 1986 MGM Film and Television Library, and that's where the seeds of Cartoon Network were quietly planted. This library wasn't just films, it was history, animated shorts, old classics, treasures that had been sitting in vaults, waiting for someone bold enough to give them new life. Among these were the animated works MGM had acquired from Associated Artists Productions, including iconic shorts from the golden age of American animation. Turner was onto something, and yet something bigger was coming. By 1991, Turner had upped the ante. For a cool $320 million, he bought Hanna-Barbera, the animation powerhouse behind beloved cartoons like Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, so on and so forth. He outbid giants like MCA, which would later become Universal Studios. Suddenly, Turner's animation vault wasn't just big, it was monumental. There were 8,500 hours of cartoons, including the pre-1948 Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, Popeye cartoons from 1933 to 1957, the MGM shorts, and Hanna-Barbera productions, so like Scooby-Doo, all that. Not only did Turner now own a treasure trove of classic animation, but Hanna-Barbera itself was still producing new content. Unlike other networks that relied on licensing deals, Turner now controlled both the past and the future of animation. And here's where things get fascinating. Turner had the content. Yeah, but what would he do with it? Just show old cartoons? Or try something audacious? Create an entire television network dedicated solely to animation. This is where Betty Cohen enters the story. A former senior VP at TNT, Cohen was chosen by Turner to develop this new channel. Cohen had to answer big questions. What do you call a 24-hour network? How do you structure the programming so that it appeals to a broad audience? And most importantly, can cartoons alone support an entire cable channel? They kicked around name ideas like Toon City and Cartoonia, both charming, but neither quite had the punch that they wanted. The name Cartoon Network was born. On February 18th of 1992, Turner Broadcasting officially announced its plans to launch Cartoon Network. At this point, it was still an abstract dream, a promise that old cartoons could become the centerpiece of a brand new kind of television network. But let's pause for a moment. Think about what was happening in the world. Cable channels were expanding, but a network devoted solely to cartoons was untested. Nickelodeon existed, yeah, and it had its own Nicktoons block, but Turner wasn't trying to compete with a slice of the audience. Turner was going for the whole pie. Every cartoon, every hour of every day. And so by mid-1992, Cartoon Network wasn't just an idea anymore. It was reality in the making. The network would go on to repackage the classics for new audiences, experiment with original programming, and even influence the way that generations think about animation. But before all that, before the checkered boards, before cartoons, before Toonami and Adult Swim, it was just a concept. A daring, borderline reckless, audacious plan to turn the timeless art of animation into a 24-hour spectacle. And that is where the story begins. August 1st, 1992, a date that would change the landscape of television. Cartoon Network was no longer just a dream. It was on the air. And how did they kick things off? Not with fanfare, not with a blockbuster premiere, but with something curious. The first broadcast was Droopy's Guide to the Cartoon Network, hosted by none other than MGM's own Droopy Dog, a cartoon giving viewers a tour of other cartoons. It was a bit meta, a little quirky, and perfect for the network's tone. And the very first cartoon ever aired on the network was Rhapsody Rabbit, a 1940s Warner Bros. Short featuring a piano-playing Bugs Bunny. At launch, the network was available in major cities like Atlanta, Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, you know, the big ones. But cable penetration was low. Pause. Only 233 cable systems carried Cartoon Network. That's tiny. By comparison, a modern channel might launch with hundreds of millions of potential viewers. So how did Turner grow the network? With a clever mix of package deals, which is just bundling Cartoon Network with sister channels like TNT and TBS to get more viewers and get into more homes. By 1994, Cartoon Network ranked as the 5th most widely distributed US cable network. Growth was slow but steady, and the channel's potential was undeniable. The early programming strategy was simple. Classic cartoons all day, every day, but not just dumped onto the screen. Turner and Cohen organized the content into themed blocks. Down with Droopy D, focusing on mainly Droopy shorts. The Tom and Jerry Show block, which featured MGM's iconic cat and mouse duo. Bugs and Daffy Tonight, which was just Looney Tunes classics, which were good for adults and kids. Late Night Black and White, dive into nostalgic 1930s animation. Soonheads, which were just short films with trivia, offering a mini history lesson in between laughs. These blocks weren't just filler, they were sort of an animation education, bars. A chance for viewers to experience the evolution of the medium while being entertained. Cartoon Network even recruited animation historians like Jerry Beck, highlighting their commitment to not just show cartoons, but to preserve and celebrate animation history. And they didn't just stop at American animation. The network showcased Canadian shorts under O Canada and student films from the ASIFA East Animation Festival. That's a fucking mouthful. Giving international and indie creators a platform rarely seen on television. But classic cartoons obviously weren't going to be enough. Turner wanted original programming, something that could define the network and give it a recognizable voice. And the first attempt was The Moxie Show in 1993, an anthology series starring Moxie, a CGI mascot with a vague resemblance to many other cartoon mascots. It was experimental, messy, and yeah, not very popular, but it planted a seed. Then came Space Ghost Coast to Coast in 1994, a talk show starring a superhero. Sounds weird, and it was, but that was the point. Turner and Cohen had a plan. Take old animation, recycle it creatively, and mix it with contemporary humor. The show became a cult hit among young adults, helping Cartoon Network appeal to viewers beyond just children. Meanwhile, Cartoon Network expanded internationally, launching its first feed in Latin America on April 3rd of 1993, and then across Europe by September 17th of that same year. The foundation of Cartoon Network worldwide was laid, turning a US-centric venture into a global brand. By 1994, Hanna-Barbera created a dedicated division for Cartoon Network programming, Cartoon Network Studios. Their first major project was What a Cartoon, also called World Premiere Tunes. This series of shorts gave independent animators a platform to create original content with higher budgets and creative freedom than previously available. And this gamble paid off. Shorts weren't just experiments, they were pilots for future hits. Case in point, Dexter's Lab, which premiered in 96 after winning a viewer vote in 1995. A simple, quirky story of a boy genius in a lab, it became one of the most defining series of the 90s. And for me, because I love Dexter's Lab. I also watched a lot of Boomerang as a kid. Maybe I should do a history of Boomerang. By 1997, Cartoon Network wasn't just airing cartoons. It had a global presence, a mix of classic and original content, early forays into adult humor with Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which I'm pretty sure would later go on to be on Adult Swim, a platform for indie and international creators. All this while establishing the checkerboard identity, which is just the visual motif that would become synonymous with the Cartoon Network brand. It was bold, simple, recognizable, and just a little bit rebellious. So from Amada's launch in 233 cable systems, to the dawn of original programming and a global footprint, the Checkerboard Era was a period of experimentation, ambition, and boldness. Cartoon Network wasn't just showing cartoons. It was rewiring how people thought about cartoons, turning what was once just an experiment into a cultural phenomenon. By 1997, Cartoon Network had established a strong foundation. Classic cartoons, a growing original shorts program, and an early adult-oriented edge with Space Ghost Coast to Coast. But Turner Broadcasting and Cartoon Network Studios had bigger ambitions. The next era would be defined by bold originality, fan-driven branding, and a surge of iconic content. The first spark was cartoons. These weren't just shows. They were a statement. Cartoon Network was no longer just a place for reruns. Between 97 and 99, Hanna-Barbera's shorts from What a Cartoon were spun into full series. These were things like Johnny Bravo, who was just the self-absorbed, Elvis-voiced ladies' man with a heart. Well, occasionally he had a heart. Cow and Chicken, a surreal comedy about farm animals and absurd family dynamics. Obviously, you got the Powerpuff Girls. You can't forget about the Powerpuff Girls. These three little shits were three superpowered little girls saving Townsville and blending action, humor, and style. My sister loved this. She was more into Disney though. My sister more like Disney. I was always more into the cartoons. You got Courage. I can't not mention Courage. This motherfucker's the GOAT, man. It's one of my favorite cartoons of all time. It was a horror comedy mix that pushed the boundaries of children's animation. I think the reason I like this, by the way, is because my mom was really into horror movies. She used to make me watch horror movies, so I think this just was relatable. Because I was like her, bro. I was scared little boy. Mike, Lou, and Og, a quirky character-driven exploration of culture and humor. And then came Ed, Edd and Eddy in '99, a show that didn't come from what a cartoon, but perfectly captured the chaotic, offbeat energy of the network. Cartoon Network created a primetime Friday showcase to feature these cartoons. It was called Cartoon Fridays, which launched on June 11th of '99. It wasn't just about airing episodes. It was a celebration of the network itself, complete with bumpers, hosts, and branding that screamed that Cartoon Network was cool. But it wasn't just comedy. Turner wanted action, so enter Toonami, the action-oriented programming block that debuted in '97. Initially filled with retro shows like Robotech and Thundercats, Toonami quickly evolved, introducing American audiences into anime like Sailor Moon, Tenchi Muyo, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, and of course Dragon Ball Z. I love Dragon Ball. I didn't get introduced to it through Toonami. Actually, I might have. I got introduced to it through my cousin's boyfriend. My older cousin's boyfriend, but he might have been watching it on Toonami, to be fair. Toonami was hosted by Molter at first, a space ghost character with a gravely voice. By '99, he was replaced by Tom, a muscular teenage robot designed specifically to appeal to the network's core demographic, boys aged from 9 to 14. Tom's mix of humor, attitude, and sleek visuals made Toonami a cultural gateway to anime in the US, and a cornerstone of Cartoon Network's success. Meanwhile, the network's design and identity continued to evolve. The Powerhouse Bumpers debuted on March 2nd of '98, and would remain until 2004. These short animated segments, often set to high-energy music, highlighted Cartoon Network's fun, fast, and unpredictable ethos. They weren't just transitions, they were like mini celebrations of animation itself. During this era, Cartoon Network also benefited from the Time Warner merger in 1996. With Warner Bros. In the family, the network gained access to post-1948 Looney Tunes, new Warner Bros. Animation productions, and reruns from kids' WB shows. These were shows like the Justice League and Teen Titans, if you can't tell I have a bias, and they would eventually air on the network, which would expand its action and superhero programming. This was a period of explosive viewership growth. Between 97 and 98, Cartoon Network's reach jumped from 38 million to 54 million, making it the second most popular network among 6 to 11-year-olds, just behind Nickelodeon. But Cartoon Network wasn't just about regular shows, regular programming. Interstitials like Groovies and Shorties brought music, animation mashups, and creative experimentation between shows. It was a culture of animation, introducing viewers to new styles and ideas in bite-sized doses. And then came Boomerang, launched on April 1st of 2000, which one of my favorite networks of all time. Personally, I like old shows. It became a full-fledged digital cable and satellite channel, giving Cartoon Network space to move older programming off the main channel while focusing on fresh, original content. Meanwhile, major corporate changes were reshaping the network. Jamie Kellner replaced Ted Turner as the head of Turner Broadcasting, and Betty Cohen, the network's founding president, left in 2001 after creative disagreements. Under new leadership, Cartoon Network embraced Adult Swim, a nighttime block aimed at older audiences, which launched on September 2nd of 2001. And I'm not going to go too in-depth on Adult Swim because I do kind of want to make a video about it in the future, so if you want to see that, let me know. I think there's a way to put a poll up in this bitch. I'll put a poll up. They included things like Home Movies, Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, C-Lab 2021, and Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Adult Swim didn't just extend the network's day part, it completely split Cartoon Network's audience, allowing daytime programming to focus on younger viewers while cultivating a cult-like following among adults. Meanwhile, Cartoon Network Studios continued to produce original content. The first theatrical film based on a Cartoon Network series, the Powerpuff Girls movie, released on July 3rd of 2002, met with mixed reviews and commercial struggles, only grossing $16.4 million on an $11 million budget. Still, it demonstrated the network's ambition to extend its properties beyond just television. By 2004, Cartoon Network had a stable hit of original shows, action programming and anime through Toonami, adult audiences through Adult Swim, a global footprint via international feeds, a sister channel called Boomerang for retro content, which, again, I love Boomerang, bro. Boomerang's one of the goats. That's why he's the GOAT. The GOAT! My bad. It was no longer just a small experiment. Cartoon Network had arrived, firmly establishing its reputation as a network that celebrated animation in all its forms, whether it be classic, original, comedic, or even action-packed. The Starburst and Powerhouse eras weren't just about shows. They were about identity, ambition, and experimentation. Cartoon Network had become much more than a channel. It was a cultural hub, a proving ground for new talent, and a platform where animation could flourish, evolve, and reach audiences in ways that were previously unimaginable. By 2004, Cartoon Network had firmly established itself as a cultural powerhouse. Original programming was thriving, Toonami had introduced an entire generation to anime, Adult Swim had grown a loyal adult audience, we all know they weren't just adults, and Boomerang was preserving classic cartoons. But it was time for a visual revolution. A new era defined by a bold rebranding, character-driven cityscapes, and a focus on original comedy programming. On June 14th of 2004, Cartoon Network unveiled the CN City rebrand. The channel kept its iconic black and white checkerboard logo, but brought it to life with a fully realized CGI city, where characters from its shows roamed streets, rode subways, and interacted in dynamic urban environments. From Dexter racing through laboratories to the Powerpuff Girls soaring across the skyline, every bumper showcased the network's identity as a living, breathing world of animation. The rebrand coincided with a shift in programming focus. Older cartoons began moving to Boomerang, making space for new, high-profile originals. The first flagship show of this era was Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, premiering in August of 2004. Foster's Home became instantaneously number 1 in the 6 to 11 demographic, outperforming nearly everything else on cable for that age group. Its success led to 26 additional episodes and cemented Cartoon Network's reputation for creatively ambitious, visually striking animated comedy. Alongside Ed, Edd n Eddy, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and Codename Kids Next Door, all fucking classics, all fucking bangers. God, Cartoon Network got it, bro. I'm gonna go rewatch Billy and Mandy, bro. I haven't watched that. I used to watch that shit all the time. Billy and Mandy was goated. God, I miss old Cartoon Network. I miss being a kid. I think that's what it is. Meanwhile, the network continued refining its audience targeting. Shows that skewed towards older kids or action-heavy content were increasingly moved towards Toonami, while Cartoon Network itself focused its main daytime programming and schedule on younger viewers. This strategy created distinct day parts that catered to multiple demographics without diluting the brand. To further promote this new era of programming, Cartoon Network launched the Yes campaign on April 3rd of 2006. These energetic bumpers and on-air spots celebrated fun, creativity, and positivity, aligning perfectly with the network's growing lineup of comedy-driven originals. The CN City identity was updated to reflect the Yes campaign, blending familiar CGI elements with dynamic, music-driven transitions that made every commercial break feel like it was a part of the show. In addition to comedy and branding, Cartoon Network experimented with live-action programming for some fucking reason, I don't know why. A move that reflected broader trends in cable. Still, I don't know why. In December of 2006, the network premiered Reanimated, a TV movie blending live action and animation. Intended as a potential springboard for further live action projects, the film tested new ways to expand the network's storytelling toolbox, even if it ultimately received mixed responses. Preschool programming also made a brief attempt at expansion with Tickle You, which launched in August of 2005. The block aimed to engage very young viewers with interactive shows and characters, but low ratings and creative misalignment led to its cancellation just 5 months later. Meanwhile, Cartoon Network explored anthology formats like Sunday Pants, a short-lived programming showcasing international and experimental animation. Airing briefly in October of 2005, Sunday Pants featured 1 to 3 minute shorts in hand-drawn flash and CGI styles, often with more mature themes than typical CN programming. Despite its short run, the show demonstrated the network's willingness to take creative risks and spotlight independent animators. By 2007, Cartoon Network was balancing experimentation and expansion. The network had solidified a trifecta of programming strategies. Daytime comedy for kids, anchored by hits like Foster's Home, Billy and Mandy, and Ed, Edd n Eddy. That's why they're the GOAT! My bad. I don't know why I keep referencing that, but that meme stuck in my head. I think I saw it before I started recording this or something. Action and anime blocks via Toonami reaching older children and teenagers. Adult content through Adult Swim, maintaining the network's dual audience model. This era also marked leadership changes. Jim Samples resigned on February 9th of 2007, following the infamous Boston bomb scare, a marketing stunt for Aqua Teen Hunger Force that went disastrously wrong. His departure paved the way for Stuart Snyder, who would oversee the next wave of programming strategies. Despite executive upheaval, Cartoon Network continued to innovate visually and narratively. By the end of the CN City/Yes eras, the network had successfully rebranded with CN City and Yes bumpers, launched Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, which was a flagship original comedy, experimented with live action and preschool programming, which both kind of just failed. They still maintained their adult-focused content through Adult Swim, and even expanded its cultural footprint through creative and experimental shorts. In essence, this era was about confidence and identity. Cartoon Network wasn't just airing cartoons anymore. It was defining the very way children's, teens, and even adults interacted with animated content. The network was bold, colorful, and experimental, setting the stage for the fall and Noods eras to push boundaries even further. As the mid-2000s gave way to the late 2000s, Cartoon Network was at a crossroads. The network had established a strong foundation with Sin City and the Yes campaign, and it had a slate of original comedies. Now under the leadership of Stuart Snyder, the focus shifted to expanding the network's audience, experimenting with new creative initiatives, and reimagining its visual identity. Snyder's approach sought to broaden the network's reach, particularly targeting children, preteens, and young teenagers, especially boys aged 9 to 14. The network began rolling out themed programming blocks, organizing shows by comedy, action, and fantasy to provide a clearer sense of identity for viewers. Alongside this, CN experimented with new programming strategies that would shape its late 2000s identity. One of the most ambitious projects of this era was the Cartoonstitute, a development initiative aimed at creating up to 150 pieces of original programming over 20 months. Veteran animators Craig McCracken and Rob Renzetti oversaw this initiative, seeking to give creators creative freedom and flexibility that would allow them to experiment with storytelling, visual style, and humor. The Cartoonstitute was designed to be a launchpad for future hits, building on the successes of What a Cartoon and the early cartoons. While the program ultimately fell short of its ambitious goals, it did produce several notable shorts that would later become full series, including Regular Show, Secret Mountain Fort Awesome, and Uncle Grandpa. The initiative reflected Cartoon Network's willingness to experiment with risk and reward. Not every pilot would succeed, but the network demonstrated a commitment to nurturing unique, creator-driven ideas rather than relying solely on pre-established franchises. Not saying they didn't have some of those pre-established franchises still, in there, but they just didn't solely, rely on those. Alongside content innovation, Cartoon Network unveiled a new visual identity in July of 2008. This was called the Noods, which is I understand the thought process of it, 'cause it's kind of like noodles, but calling it the Noods is such a crazy concept to me. Anyways, the Noods were blank, rounded figures that could transform into characters from Cartoon Network shows. They were playful, abstract, and flexible, representing the network's eclectic lineup and desire for visual experimentation. Collaborating with Kid Robot designer Tristan Eaton, the Noods bumpers were produced by Capacity and animated by Crew 972. The Noods served as transitional bumpers between programs, reinforcing the network's brand while interjecting quirky humor and unexpected visuals. Though initially intended as a temporary design, the Noods resonated with fans and became a defining visual hallmark of the late 2000s CN identity. By 2008, Cartoon Network was also heavily investing in franchise-driven content. The You Are Here lineup launched that year was anchored by The Secret Saturdays and Star Wars The Clone Wars. The Clone Wars in particular was a ratings juggernaut, setting a new record for most watched premiere in Cartoon Network history, surpassing even Class of 3000. This success demonstrated the power of strong intellectual properties and fan engagement, setting a precedent for CN's future strategy of leveraging established brands alongside original content. This lineup also marked a shift in marketing strategy, emphasizing fan interaction with message boards, leaderboards, and virtual badges, turning casual viewers into engaged community members. Despite creative success, the network faced challenges expanding its audience beyond just animation. Obviously, they're called Cartoon Network, you're gonna have trouble with that. In 2009, Cartoon Network launched CN Reel, which was just a block of live-action reality shows. This move, partly influenced by the 2007 writer's strike, was insanely controversial. Longtime fans criticized CN Reel for straying away from the network's cartoon-centric identity, while ratings failed to meet expectations. Most of the CN Reel lineup was eventually just removed, leaving only a few shows like Dude, What Would Happen, and Destroy Build Destroy. The CN Reel experiment demonstrated the risk of overextending brand identity, but it also reflected the network's willingness to test new formats and respond to changing trends in children's programming. Other highlights of the era include Wedgies, which went from 2008 to 2011, which were short interstitial animations between programs, including Big Baby, Calling Cat 22, and The Talented Mr. Bixby, keeping the network visually fresh. Seasonal and thematic branding also happened, tied to music from artists like CeeLo Green and The Hives, giving the network like a sort of seasonal personality. Programming experimentation with The Secret Saturdays, Star Wars The Clone Wars, and franchise-based pilots paved the way for content-driven scheduling rather than just random time slots. By the end of the Fall and Noods eras, Cartoon Network had solidified its dual identity, a home for innovative original animation, while also experimenting with visual branding, franchise-based programming, and interactive fan engagement. This era set the stage for the Checkerboard Era, where CN would combine bold visual identity, breakout originals, and global recognition into one cohesive strategy. By 2010, Cartoon Network was ready for a bold reinvention. The network had spent the previous decade experimenting with Noods branding. Again, wild name. Why are you choosing the name Noods, man? Themed programming blocks, and live-action experiments. Now it was time to return to its core identity, animation itself, but with a fresh, modern look and a slate of originals designed to capture both children and young adults. The Checkerboard Era was defined by a brand overhaul, which debuted on May 29th of 2010, after being registered earlier that year. The new logo maintained the classic black and white checkerboard motif, now paired with vibrant CMYK colors, abstract patterns, and playful on-air bumpers. This branding was more than just cosmetic. It reflected CN's commitment to innovation, diversity of style, and visual storytelling. The real heartbeat of the Checkerboard Era was its original programming. In 2010, Adventure Time and Regular Show premiered to instant acclaim, quickly becoming cultural phenomena. Adventure Time, created by Pendleton Ward, introduced audiences to a surreal post-apocalyptic land of ooh, blending absurdist humor with emotional storytelling. It redefined what children's programming could be, appealing to both kids and adults with its layered narrative, imaginative world building, and quirky characters. Meanwhile, Regular Show, created by J.G. Quintel, delivered a more grounded slice-of-life approach, but with equally surreal comedy and absurdist stakes. The show's offbeat humor, relatable characters, and bold storytelling resonated across demographics, proving that Cartoon Network could launch fresh hits that weren't tied to pre-existing franchises. These two series set the gold standard for the network, and influenced nearly every original series that followed during this era. The Checkerboard Era wasn't just about comedies. It also focused on action-oriented series to appeal to a broader audience. Shows like Generator Rex, which was just a sci-fi action series blending superhero themes with inventive animation. Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, you know, one of the goats back here. Again, I'm gonna keep saying this throughout this because I have a lot of favorites, but also one of the goats back here. I watched a lot of this. But yeah, it continued the long-running Ben 10 franchise, delivering high stakes and obviously alien adventures as Ben 10. Can't have Ben 10 without the aliens. Symbiotic Titan, which was a visually striking sci-fi series combining giant robot battles and teen drama. These programs demonstrated Cartoon Network's commitment to diversity in content, offering both comedic and action-oriented storytelling, appealing to children, teens, and even older audiences. While the network doubled down on animation, the residual effects of seeing real were still visible. Live-action series like Tower Prep and Unnatural History premiered around 2010, though ratings were lackluster and the show struggled to find any type of an audience. Ultimately, Cartoon Network pivoted away from any type of live action, recognizing that its core identity and audience loyalty lay firmly in animation. These experiments, while short-lived, reinforced the importance of staying true to the brand, while also learning from the missteps in audience targeting. By 2010 to 2011, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network's nighttime block for adults that I've been talking about, I don't know why I gotta explain it. I don't know why the fuck I even wrote that. Continued to expand its influence. On December 27th of 2010, Adult Swim moved its start time from 10 p.m. to 9 p.m., signaling the network's recognition that older viewers represented a substantial portion of its audience. This expansion blurred the line between Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, reflecting a dual audience strategy: daytime for children and evening for adults, each cultivating its distinct identity while sharing the same channel space. The Checkerboard Era also coincided with the rise of digital platforms, and Cartoon Network embraced TV everywhere strategies. The network did things such as offered a live TV simulcast through its website and apps, provided on-demand access to episodes, expanding reach beyond traditional cable, launched digital-first short and experimental content to engage online fans. The digital integration allowed Cartoon Network to connect with a tech-savvy generation, ensuring its relevance as traditional cable viewership just kind of started to slowly decline. In 2012, Cartoon Network also celebrated its 20th anniversary with a weekend-long lineup of themed reruns, spotlighting shows from the late 90s to the mid-2000s. This celebration was more than just nostalgia. It highlighted the network's legacy of innovation while also introducing a new generation to classic content. Alongside these festivities, CN launched the Cartoon Network Shorts Department, a successor to the Cartoonstitute, greenlighting shorts like Clarence, Steven Universe, Over the Garden Wall. These projects continued the network's tradition of supporting creator-driven content, maintaining a pipeline of innovative and original series for years to come. In 2013, Cartoon Network updated its identity again by introducing things like new bumpers and graphics, GIF-like short animations for each show, a lighter white background for promotional materials. These updates emphasize clarity and playful interactivity, keeping the Check-It brand visually engaging and adaptive to a digital-first audience. During this era, leadership transitions shaped the network's trajectory. On March 6th of 2014, Stuart Snyder departed after corporate restructuring. On July 16th, 15th of 2014, Christina Miller was named president and general manager of Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, and Boomerang. How the fuck, general manager? Bitch, is this a fucking fast food restaurant? What do you mean general manager? They have general managers? I thought it was just like a retail thing. Like fast food, retail, you know what I'm saying? Like stuff like that. That's crazy. What? Imagine being the CEO and the general manager or something. Miller's leadership would eventually usher in the Dimensional Era, focusing on digital growth, cross-platform promotion, and global audience engagement, building directly on the foundation laid during the Checkerboard Era. By 2016, Cartoon Network had revitalized its visual identity with bold, colorful, and modular branding, launched Adventure Time and regular shows, cementing its reputation for creator-driven hits, expanded action programming with Generator Rex, Symbiotic Titan, and Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, integrated digital platforms to complement cable viewership, reinforced Adult Swim as a core part of the channel's dual audience strategy. The Checkerboard Era was a high watermark for creative experimentation, digital integration, and brand cohesion, a period where Cartoon Network redefined itself as a modern, multi-platform animation powerhouse. By 2016, Cartoon Network had firmly established itself as a network capable of delivering both creator-driven hits and beloved franchises. But the media landscape was shifting rapidly. Streaming platforms were rising and cable subscriptions were essentially just dying out. Audiences started demanding content that could be enjoyed across multiple devices. The network responded with a major rebranding and a renewed emphasis on digital engagement, multi-generational appeal, and creative experimentation, ushering in the Dimensional Era. In May of 2016, Cartoon Network unveiled its Dimensional branding. Developed by Brent Design Lab, this style built on the Check-It's bold graphics, but now incorporated 3D CGI, stop motion, 2D animation, and mixed media, so essentially just everything, you know what I mean? Unlike previous branding packages, the Dimensional branding merged different artistic styles in a single on-air identity. Featured characters from across CN's programming library, interacting in imaginative ways, and provided a flexible framework for promotions, bumpers, and digital content. Couldn't think of the S word, I'm a little bit dumb, you know what I mean? The goal was clear: embrace the future of animation while also still celebrating the past, creating a dynamic, visually rich experience for viewers of all ages. The Dimensional Era leaned heavily on reviving classic properties, giving them a modern twist to attract both nostalgic adults and a new generation of viewers, even though most of these are ass, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Such as Ben 10 2016, a complete reboot of the popular Alien Hero series with modern animation and updated storylines. It's just like Teen Titans Go though. Teen Titans Go is ass. I don't even think I mentioned it in the script because that's how much I dislike it, but now I'm talking about it because how much I dislike it. It's kind of just it's a double-edged sword. I didn't want to rant about it, so I didn't include it, but now I'm ranting about it and it's not even included in the Powerpuff Girls from 2016 as well, revisiting the iconic trio with vibrant visuals and new adventures. And the reception for this was mixed among fans of the original series, obviously, just like Teen Titans Go. You know, I hate that show. The OG Teen Titans is just so good that I don't even understand why they even attempted, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I'm ranting still. Thundercats Roar in 2020, which was a bold comedy take on the classic action franchise, emphasizing humor over the dark tones of the original series, which I wasn't a big Thundercats fan, so I'm not going to speak on this one. I don't really know too much about how this was received. But yeah, I don't know. These reboots highlighted Cartoon Network's strategy of balancing nostalgia with modern sensibilities, aiming to retain older fans while expanding the audience to younger ones as well. There's fucking crows going cawing at each other, motherfucker, outside my window right now. What is going on? What is happening out there, cuh? What the fuck? Under Christina Miller, Cartoon Network prioritized digital growth. The network recognized that traditional cable alone was no longer enough to reach its audience. Some initiatives that they used included launching interactive apps with games, shorts, and exclusive content, updating its VOD or video on demand platform, whatever you call it. I call it VOD because I'll be on Twitch and shit. That's just what I hear. I don't know if I'm not saying Twitch is where it started, by the way. I doubt it, but this is where I heard it from, so that's why I call it VOD. But they did this to allow personalized playlists and early access to new episodes. They started promoting shows first on digital platforms before traditional cable airings, which is honestly, like, that's a no-brainer. Why would you not do that anyways? Hello? You're only promoting it on your channel? Like, what are we talking about here? It seems brain dead. This isn't even, like, that long ago. This is, like, 2016 to 2020 era. So, like, you know what I mean? The strategy allowed CN to meet viewers where they were, whether it be on tablets, phones, or streaming platforms, while maintaining its relevance in a rapidly evolving media ecosystem. The Dimensional Era also coincided with major corporate changes. On October 22nd of 2016, AT&T announced its intention to acquire Time Warner for a whopping $108.7 billion. Jesus Christ, that's a lot of money. The merger, completed in June of 2018, brought Cartoon Network under the Warner Media umbrella. This merger created new opportunities and challenges: access to broader content libraries, increased cross-platform promotion, and integration with emerging streaming services. But also more corporate oversight and restructuring would come along with it. Always the corporate oversight. It always happens. The downfall of man is corporate oversight. Fucking ignore me, bye bad. Anyways, 2017 marked Cartoon Network's 25th anniversary. They celebrated with an exhibit titled 25 Years of Drawing on Creativity, in partnership with the Paley Center. Exhibition showcased iconic characters, original art, and behind-the-scenes materials from CN's history. This milestone reinforced Cartoon Network's status as a cultural touchstone, bridging decades of animation history with a forward-looking, innovative approach. In 2018, Cartoon Network announced the construction of its first amusement hotel in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. What the fuck is why in Pennsylvania? What is why not like in Miami or like New York or like, you know, like a big, like, what the fuck is in Lancaster? What the fuck? It opened in January of 2020. The facility offered immersive themed rooms inspired by CN properties, interactive attractions and experiences for children and families, a unique brand extension into physical entertainment, which hadn't really worked in the past, but you live and you don't learn, I reckon. This move demonstrated Cartoon Network's willingness to expand beyond the television screen, creating multi-dimensional experiences for fans. Now, I never went to this because it's in fucking Pennsylvania, but during the Dimensional Era, Cartoon Network focused on cross-generational programming, experimenting with short-form digital content for online audiences, limited-run series and miniseries like Summer Camp Island, and revived classics to appeal to both nostalgic parents and new viewers. The classics are goated. I'm so happy I can just watch them, which I'm not going to say how, but just say you became Luffy. You could have watched them forever anyways, but we won't talk about that. The network was testing the waters for a broader content strategy, laying the groundwork for its eventual focus on family viewing, preschool audiences, and adult animation blocks. Towards the end of the era, Cartoon Network navigated significant leadership transitions. The AT&T Time Warner merger brought more corporate oversight, and Christina Miller emphasized digital-first strategies and content alignment with streaming goals. By the end of the Dimensional Era in 2020, Cartoon Network had refreshed its visual identity with multi-style mixed media branding, continued reviving and rebooting franchises, expanded digital engagement across apps and VOD, prepared for integration into broader streaming strategies. The Dimensional Era solidified Cartoon Network as a network that could embrace its legacy while innovating for the future. It combined creator-driven content, franchise revivals, and digital-first strategies, ensuring CN remained relevant in an increasingly competitive landscape. By 2020, Cartoon Network had weathered nearly 3 decades of shifts in viewership, corporate ownership, and media consumption habits. The rise of streaming services, combined with just straight up the death of cable essentially, prompted the network to rethink its approach. This era, branded as Redraw Your World, later evolving into the Prism visual identity, was defined by redefining the network for the next generation, embracing digital-first strategies, family-friendly content, and multi-platform experiences. In April of 2020, Thomas Scheme, I don't know if I pronounced that right, put his name up on screen with his picture, was appointed president of Warner Bros. Global Kids, Young Adults, and Classics, overseeing Cartoon Network, Boomerang, Adult Swim, and Turner Classic Movies. His mandate was to expand the network's demographic reach and modernize its programming strategies. A scheme focused on introducing new programming blocks, including preschool and family content, marking a major shift from CN's traditional 6 to 12-year-old audience. He prioritized digital-first releases, interactive apps, and early access on streaming platforms to capture audiences increasingly consuming content on demand. This era also coincided with the Warner Media divestment and merger with Discovery Inc., forming Warner Bros. Discovery, under CEO David Zaslav, in April of 2022. Corporate restructuring led to cutbacks, consolidation of development operations, and a sharper focus on profitable intellectual properties. In 2021, Cartoon Network launched its Redraw Your World campaign. This campaign would emphasize things like inclusivity, creativity, and global storytelling, as well as new programming blocks like Cartoonito, aimed at preschool audiences, featuring 8 hours of weekday content and 2 hours on weekends, family focus blocks including Acme Night on Sunday evenings, combining feature films, specials, and original series. The campaign represented CN's effort to balance nostalgia, innovation, and accessibility, aiming to engage younger viewers, their families, and longtime fans. With the launch of HBO Max, Cartoon Network shifted much of its content strategy towards streaming first releases. Shows like Summer Camp Island, Infinity Train, and The Fungies, or The Fun Guys, I don't know, I'm a fun guy, my bad, were made available on digital platforms before airing on cable, reflecting a broader industry trend toward on-demand viewing. By 2022, CN's website was closed and redirected to the Max Hub. The Hub, my bad. My fault. Marking the end of the 26 years of web presence. Social media and streaming became primary engagement tools, with CN leveraging these platforms to maintain audience interaction and promote shows. This approach acknowledged the reality of shrinking cable audiences while keeping the network culturally relevant and digitally agile. This era also saw strategic expansion of blocks and content experimentation. Adult Swim expanded earlier to 5 p.m. ET by 2023, with the Checkered Pass sub-block airing classic Cartoon Network originals. Toonami Rewind launched in May of 2024 as a Friday night block featuring classic action and anime series, replacing part of Checkered Pass. Cartoon Nito solidified preschool programming, helping Cartoon Network diversify its demographic beyond just the 6 to 12 age gap. It's really just a competitor for what is Nicktoons called? Is it Nicktoons? Like the kids one? Is it just called Nicktoons now? Nick Kids or whatever? The kids Nick version, bro. You know what I'm talking about. Fuck you. Acme Night aimed at family co-viewing, airing animated movies, specials, and family-friendly shows. Through these initiatives, Cartoon Network was reinventing itself as a multi-demographic network, addressing audiences from preschoolers to adults, while preserving its animation-first ethos. Following the Redraw Your World campaign, CN began phasing in the Prism branding, a pastel-colored visual identity representing things like a softer, more modern aesthetic, continuity with CN's history of playful, bold colors, a focus on animation as the core of the network. This new look signals a return to CN's roots as an animation network, distancing itself from the purely demographic-driven identity that had dominated previous decades. Amidst restructuring under Warner Bros. Discovery, Cartoon Network experienced cutbacks and show cancellations, particularly of underperforming or streaming-focused content, which, makes sense. To be fair. There is one thing I will say about the rise of streaming though, while I have a little second. Bro, there used to basically be only gas TV shows that stayed. Now we get some weird shit. Look at Netflix originals, bro. These bitches are ass. Mergers of production labels with Cartoon Network Studios, integrating operations with Warner Bros. Animation. Strategic focus on established IPs to maximize audience engagement and reduce financial risk. Despite these challenges, leadership emphasized that Cartoon Network would continue as a home for innovative and beloved animation, balancing classic properties with new content for multiple demographics. Leading up to its 30th anniversary in 2022, Cartoon Network celebrated with a month-long birthday bash campaign, including marathons and live-streamed events. Complete series releases of Courage the Cowardly Dog, Ed, Ed and Eddie, and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Public reaffirmation via social media that Cartoon Network would not be shutting down despite industry speculation. These celebrations served both as a tribute to the network's legacy and a statement of its ongoing relevance in the changing media landscape. The Prism era represents a network aware of its legacy, yet adaptable to the demands of the modern media environment. Cartoon Network is now expanding its audience to preschool, family, and adult viewers, leveraging streaming and digital platforms to complement cable broadcasts, investing in franchise revivals and established IPs, which they should be making more original shit, I'm not gonna hold you, but that's not saying they don't make anything original, but saying. Maintaining animation as the network's central identity, bringing nostalgia with innovation. From its early days as a 24-hour cartoon library to a multi-platform, multi-generational network, Cartoon Network has continually evolved, adapting to new technologies, audience expectations, and corporate landscapes, all while remaining a home for imaginative storytelling and bold animation. And so yeah, that's the history of Cartoon Network. If you enjoy, make sure to like, share, subscribe, you know the deal. There's a video on one side, a playlist on the other, subscribe right around my kiosk, my bad. And yeah, peace. Oh, if you have any thing that you want to see in the future, comment. No, if I missed anything, comment. My bad, meant to say that. Peace.